Hey everybody, I'm Ben Begley, and today I'm talking movies with Andy Palmer and Paul Soter, and the movie is Badlands of Kane.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's I Talk Movies.
We were just saying how, Paul, you were saying I could do trailer VO, maybe.
Yeah, I would buy you as an in-a-world wear guy.
In a world. We're talking Badlands of Kane today, where the entire episode I'm going to talk like this. No, I'm not going to do that, but it is a good idea, though. Maybe I should. I'm Ben Begley. I'm your host today for I Talk Movies With, and my two guests have a new movie that came out about 2 weeks ago, I believe.
Yeah.
Two or 3 weeks ago on VOD and DVD, and it's called Badlands of Kane. It's a horror thriller, more of a thriller, I would say.
More of a thriller, yeah.
But here's the director, Andy Palmer.
Hi, guys.
And one of the stars, Paul Soter. So let's get into it. Let's talk about it. So Badlands of Kane. What's Andy? What's a general hook for people? Like,
Sure.
what's the general rundown?
It's really like this fun, old-fashioned thriller. Like, it was my love letter to like Hitchcock and Twilight Zone and stuff like that. We do like the whole Saul Bass opening credits and the whole nine. And it was conceived by our writer and our star Rochelle DiMaria, and she was in my first film, Find Me. And we were sitting around set one day, and she goes, "Oh, I have this funny story. My friend was doing a cross-country road trip, and her car broke down, and they got towed into this little town." And then they just we had to stay in a motel, and then the next day this guy just showed up at our room. Like, they just gave everybody our room numbers, and then they fixed our car, and we drove out of town, and our car broke down again in the exact same spot. And then the guy shows up and tows us back into town, and at that point we were like, we're never leaving, we're gonna die. And I was like, that is an incredible story.
That's a movie.
Yeah, you should write a script, literally off the cuff. And then we wrap Find Me, and then 2 weeks later, she emails me a script. She goes, "Here's that script that we were talking about." And I was like, "Oh, I better put up now." It was just I was like, "Oh crap! Okay, we have to do something here."
So in this instance, that paid off for you. I'm wondering how many other times in your life you've said, "Hey, that's a great script idea," and then 2 weeks later, it's like, "Hey, remember the thing about the?"
It's the hardest part, because you have especially you get one film done, and then everybody's like, "Oh my god, I have the script." As I recall, when you sent me the Funhouse Massacre, I have this horror film, and would you take a read on it? And I was like, "Oh, sure." I'm not knowing,
Look at this guy.
because I'm always just like, "Oh god, if it's bad, what do I say?" And
especially
actually,
if it's a friend, it's weird.
Yes.
If the script sucks, you're like, "Oh fuck."
Yeah, what do I say?
I'm gonna see him at social gatherings.
And in both cases, I was just like, "Oh crap, we should go make this movie. This is sweet."
Yeah.
You know?
I'm going to send you the shittiest script I can come up with just to see how you respond.
I mean, I'm just gonna start pitching you really shitty ideas, and
that would be interesting.
He's like, "Let's make it. I got the money. When do we start?" Oh, Jesus.
My wife's always like, "Oh yeah, your voice goes very high when you don't like something." You're like, "Oh, it's great.
okay, that's a good idea.
I see a lot of potential."
So Paul, people know you from Super Troopers, Beer Fest, Club Dread, Super Troopers 2 coming up very soon, as we talked about on Guilty Movie Pleasures. So if you're watching this and you didn't see the episode of Guilty Movie Pleasures, make sure you go find it on YouTube and watch that, because we got in depth. We learned some things. We learned a lot. I learned a lot.
Some of us more than others.
I learned a lot on Guilty. I learned that, well, you'll have to see what I learned isn't real and what is real during that episode. But Paul, this character's a departure for you and we talked about this a little bit on Guilty Movie Pleasures, but I want to get into it more here. Because it's a much darker character. There's charm to him, for sure, but there's a danger behind that as well. And what was that like, not trying to, because you succeed at it, but what was it like attacking that kind of role?
Well, it was a real struggle, because I read this script and I thought it was super cool, but this is the bad guy, and I'm not reaching for sort of fishing for flattery or whatever, but don't regard myself in any way as being an intimidating person or carrying any kind of menace. And so what was tough is I was like, I'd love to do any kind of real dramatic acting. I'd love to act in a horror movie because I love the genre. I love the idea of playing a bad guy, but I don't. This guy seems so great, and the script is cool. I don't want to then say yes and then embarrass him by not being able to do it. And we met and we talked a lot about it. And what we really tried to do was say, okay, well, what's the version of a bad guy that I can pull off? because Terry originally was written with a lot of swagger and just a ton of presence and a lot more sort of overt physicality and stuff. And he was also this religious leader. And so, we talked through it, and what I said to Andy and what I said to Rochelle was like, okay, well, I think I can play this guy if we find a way to come at him to where he's sneaky, creepy menace as opposed to a real, immediate, in-your-face menace. So, yeah.
And just for people that are watching that are actors as well, what's the process for you, if it's not too actory to ask, but because, there's a difference between playing an idea of menace or playing an emotional quality. What helped you get down and make it seem very real and very menacing without being put on, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, what I tried to do, and as we talked through the script, and I think with any character, what you want to do is say, well, all right, well, what's this guy's point of view? Mm-hmm. I think most bad people don't think that they're bad people. Yep. And so in his case, it was a matter of, how can I crack a sense of point of view from this guy that you'd be like, okay, well, I see what where he feels like he's been betrayed and where he feels like, he got a shitty end of the deal, and so he's trying to go after something. And, without spoiling it, I mean, the guy does have, you don't want to call him a victim, but he is certainly, the circumstances have dictated him being in the situation that he's in. So it was about really hooking onto that, I think.
Yeah, it's the best. The best villains are the ones that A, don't know they're villains, and B, didn't start out that way, right? And, and that's what Paul went, because it was the script in itself was Terry was very physical and very kind of preachy, that kind of like not over the top, but in a way where it was just like his presence was very intimidating, and Paul brought this whole other thing to it where it was like you're just like, something's not right with that guy.
It's interesting you say that, because I remember I saw the movie back before we did Funhouse. You sent me a link to it, and I think it was, I don't even know if it was officially fully finished yet.
No,
I can't remember. Yeah. But I remember when Renee and I were watching it, we were like, there's something wrong with that guy, but I kind of like him still, but there's just something off. And that's, to me, the coolest villains, where it's not mustache twirly, because that's, to both of your credit, it's a role that, written the wrong way or acted the wrong way or directed the wrong way, any of those, just a smidgen off, and suddenly you're just watching a caricature of a human being. And I think that's really what's cool about the movie, is that the whole time I'm like, there's something off, but I don't know what his end game is, and I want to know. I'm dying to know, but there's something really wrong here. Yep. And that's what it's like this kind of feeling of dread, like we've talked about before about the film, and you've mentioned, is that it's like an episode of the Twilight Zone almost, where like there's this feeling of dread, and there's a mystery involved, and that's what's really cool. And I think what fans of the horror genre and thrillers will really get a kick out of this movie, is that it has this kind of slow burn to a review.
Yeah, we've been really surprised that the reviews so far have been really good, and a lot of the people that I went out to were people that I went out to for Funhouse, and so it was I was really interested to be like, hey, this movie is not gory, it's not like near, or as crazy as Funhouse was, and that people have responded in kind. They've been like, yeah, it's not gory at all, but for horror fans, like, it's really like, you just know something is really fucked up the whole time, and then you just want to see what that something is, and that's a tribute to these guys, and Paul did that, and then James Marshall did the same thing, and we had James Marshall from Twin Peaks, and he's this like lovable kind of gas station attendant and stuff like that. But at the same time, you're like, dude, he has done some creepy shit in his life,
Even Lee, right? Lee from, am I thinking of the right name? She was in Clueless as well. Why am I blanking on her name right now?
Yes,
Lee, right?
Yes, Lee.
Both of us are going, because we're thinking of Lee in Funhouse, Lee Parker.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's great.
Yes.
She's fantastic in it, and she has this kind of weird, creepy Stepford wives vibe
Yes.
to her, and the daughter too, where you're like, is the daughter the evil? What is happening here? And so I like that you kind of misdirect the audience, and I don't want to give anything
Lee
away.
Hall.
Lee Hall, thank
Yes,
you,
yep.
thank you. She was in my acting class, and I was gonna feel like a big asshole if I couldn't remember her name. Lee Hall, she's fantastic.
She is.
And you use a lot of the same actors in your movies. You've
Yeah, yeah.
used Rochelle in a few. You've used Carlos Alizraki, who's a buddy of ours. And so what I mean, how did the casting go about in this? Was there? I mean, Rochelle, was she always slated to play the lead in it,
Yeah.
or like, yeah?
It's like when we're doing like these smaller budget movies and stuff like that. It's like we can't afford to option scripts, so we go to like, we have been going to like actors that are like, hey, I wrote this part for me. Would you, and you're like, great, that's it.
Which is very nice of you, because most people just go, thanks, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, no, but it's just like, but we also happen to be very fortunate in that we know really talented people, and Rochelle is one of those people. You are one of those people, and so that's kind of how every movie that I've ever done has come about. Is that you have the writer on set, and for me it was really interesting with Kane because Rochelle had written the script, and so she had these very kind of like preconceived notions of how she had it in her head. And then Paul was also a director, and that was really scary for me when he showed up on set, because I was like if I'm doing this wrong, he's gonna be like, what the fuck is this guy? What the fuck is this guy doing? And stuff like that. Because I was like, am I doing it? It was my second film. I was like, am I doing this
You would
right?
have had to have done some really fundamentally wrong things for me to have even noticed. I mean, you would have had to have had the camera pointed the wrong way. I mean, I'm not, yeah.
But it's like, so there was definitely little things to kind of, with Rochelle, there was a lot of like trust where I was like, just trust me that this will look the way that, this will look very cool. It's a little different than you have in your head, but it's going to look very cool. And then with Paul, it was me getting over myself to be like, he was so good, but it was like 3 or 4 takes in before I was like, I want to try something, but should I say, because there's that intimidation factor. Like, this guy has done so much more stuff than I have. So yeah, there was that kind of stuff where you just have to get over it.
Yeah. And what from your standpoint as a director, how do you like to direct actors? Is it more scene-based, crappy? Like, how do you approach an actor? Like, if you want to give a note, like, what was your process?
For me, it's always like, for me, I'm very big on tone. Like, is the tone of the scene working? And are we getting from point A to point B correctly?
Is everybody acting in the same movie?
Yeah, and stuff like that. Does this feel like it's going to all kind of come together? But I'm very, for me, it's like I really, really try to like direct mostly in casting. Like, I just want to find people that are amazing, and so that when we're on set, they're just going to.
You can leave them alone.
Yes,
and I do the same thing. It's like I'm really comfortable when I have directed, articulating my vision to the crew in terms of it's very easy for me to say, like, okay, no, that should go right there, and I know that should look like that. But there is something that I don't want to have that conversation with the actor, because you just start to feel like, I don't know, and so you really try to knock it out in the directing process. I'm trying to think, like with John Carpenter, with Halloween, where he really kept saying, like, I cast you, you're right for the part, so just kind of leave me alone.
Yeah.
Which I know actors don't like to hear that.
Yeah,
but.
And they'll challenge you, Rochelle in particular. And the thing about Rochelle is that she likes, like, when there's something serious going, because I'm very positive, I'm very cheery, like, you're doing a great job and everything like that. And she, when she had to go to these dark places, needed somebody to, like, kind of set up these stakes and be like, if you don't get in this fucking take, it's over. We're not gonna, like, she needed to emotionally get to that place. That was the hardest thing for me.
Yeah, because you're the least confrontational person, so I would love to know how that.
Yeah, it was tough, man. It was the first week.
Yeah.
And then we had this like 2-hour conversation on the phone on one of our off days, where she's like, I understand where you're coming from. I need you to do this in these particular circumstances. I'm like, oh, you mean direct? Okay, cool. Yeah, I can hop on that.
It is weird, and I don't know if we just happen to have similar circumstances. But when I did Dark Circles, it's a heavy movie, and especially heavy for my lead actress, and it threw me off because we'd had this relationship for quite a while leading up to shooting, and she'd help me put the money together, and it was a very comfortable, casual relationship. And then when we got to set, she seemed to need to generate some push and pull to get her head right, and I didn't get that for a long time, and it really threw me off because like, this is so weird. Like, this person was really easy to deal with, and then suddenly it seemed to just need to generate some tension. And you know, you say that, and I'm not even sure I understood it completely until now. That idea that like, well, yeah, you do have to find a way to get into a headspace when you're going to these places. It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I feel like the flip side happened for me on Funhouse where I came in like a week late when you guys were already shooting and everybody was like, dude, it's so fucking funny. Everybody's so funny. They're so funny. And I'm like, shit, Deputy Doyle's like the comedic relief in this movie.
It's like no pressure.
And I'm like, God, everybody already loves everyone. They're already best friends. I came a week late.
Thanks, Supergirl.
And I remember getting, my first scene was pushed a day, and I remember showing up and getting all in my wardrobe, and then you guys came out and you're like, we got to push it to like 2 days from now, and I just looked like a sad. I came up to you and I was just like, I'm so sad right now.
He was like, I was like, oh my God, he's like a lost puppy. I felt so bad.
But then it's funny how like once we started shooting, I felt like you and I, especially with comedy, I trust you implicitly with comedy, and you kind of let me go to. I like it because I know that you'll let me riff and you'll cut out whatever sucks.
Right.
That's what I like about you the most is when I'm like, I can just say whatever, right? And he'll eventually say cut. And then in editing, since he's editing it, he'll make me look funnier.
But I'm not a good self-editor of you because you tickle me pink. Like you just fucking
tickle me pink.
You make me laugh more than anybody. And so when you watch you watch the first cut of Funhouse, everybody's like, hey man, Ben's funny, but he ain't that fucking funny. You know,
he's not tickle me pink funny.
You know? And I'm like, are you kidding? Because that is hilarious. And they're like, it's too much.
It's too much.
Sure enough, I start like slashing it back, and I'm like, no, I see where they're going.
And you know what's ironic though? I don't want to get too off the topic of Badlands again, but what's ironic is most of the stuff that was cut was just added shit on set. Like everything that was scripted still stayed in.
Totally.
And we did get a lot of good ad-libs in there, but I think like we were talking about when you watched the Super Troopers episode, when you were trying to debate on what's too much Farva for the sequel, it's kind of like what we were figuring out, what's too much Doyle. When we don't, that's the thing with, I think, comedies and also with any character in general, there's always the barometer of how far can we take this before the character becomes too unbelievable or too just, like even a bad guy. How far is it to he's just too unlikable and you can't figure out where he's coming from? And I think that in both films you struck the balance as the director of it, and your performances in Badlands of Kane, like I said before, it's that barometer where you can't get too. You can't do too much.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like is the problem with a lot of films coming out nowadays. These comedies, they're like improv parades where it's just like, when a comedy is 2 hours and 15 minutes long and you're like, what the what? This is like longer than most Academy Award nominated, like biopics are shorter than these movies. That's when I think it's like, for me, brevity is always like, what makes it.
It's just tone. It's just finding what's just the right amount and stuff like that. And it is funny, like, so Rochelle didn't audition. Obviously, she had written the part, but I knew she was amazing. And then we had a bunch of people come in, and then Paul also did an audition, and this was a big point of contention between the casting director and me, because he had brought in some amazing actors, like really amazing actors, to come in and read for Terry. And then as soon as I found out that we might be able to get Paul, I was like, yep, just lock him in. I didn't care. But he asked me, and I said, because he's like, yeah, but he does comedies. And I said, have you not seen 1 Hour Photo or The Fan or not The Fan? What's the Big Fan? I was like, they're the best. He's gonna bring something that no one has ever seen. And it's so funny. I was on IMDb the other day because I'm like a big whore when it comes to like people talking about the movie, good or bad. And I'm like, what did somebody say about it? And the guy had this comment on IMDb. He goes, I had no idea that was the guy from Super Troopers till the end of the movie. Like, because it was
awesome.
Because he just loses himself. And really, it looks just like you. Only you have these horn rim glasses and you're creepy as fuck. Like it was so insane to see it on set. And his first day was this big long sermon speech.
Oh yeah.
And I was just like, Oh yeah.
That's,
oh yeah.
That's. I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to ask you about that, Paul. Because I don't know, beliefs wise or whatever, but in something like that, when you have to give this big preachy sermon and things like that, what was your process to not make that seem like a televangelist or whatever? Like, how did you? And was that a difficult scene for you? If that scene wasn't the most difficult, then what was the most challenging for you?
It wasn't.
I like to ask 17 questions in a row.
Never. Here's a tip for directing: never tell them, give them more than 3 directions at once.
See, I didn't know that. Now I learned something. My only fear of approaching that big sermon was more just that, having done a lot of low budget stuff, you don't want to be the actor who doesn't have his shit together when you're burning through your day, and so
it's lunch and you're not even a page through it.
Yeah, and it's a big chunk.
Big.
What I liked about stepping back into something dramatic that way was that any dramatic experience I've had in my life so far has been on stage, doing theater in high school and college. So actually, that was a pretty comforting way to go back in because it was stand up on the stage and learn your lines. I'm good at learning lines, so I knew that. So to me, that felt good, and then I liked being able to come and knock it out and know that show myself as a guy who can remember his lines, because it's amazing how much you work with real actors, you work with great actors, and how much you're like, oh my God, this guy, you have to feed him every line.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to be that guy, especially as you talked about being the guy who comes in late on a set. You guys had shot for a week already, and so even though everybody made me feel very welcome, you just don't want to be the guy who comes in and sucks for one reason or another. In fact, I did the neurotic thing that I think I laugh at actors for doing, that we wrapped, and then they were supposed to email me my call sheet for the next day, and it was late for some reason, and I did that thing of like, it was 10 o'clock, and I was like, am I fired off of the movie? But really, no, the toughest part, there was, at the end, when I'm really kind of having my final showdown with Rochelle, and I have to really finally, for the first time, get aggressive and get really angry and get really loud, which is something I don't like doing in the real world. It was doing that and getting over feeling like I don't want to look stupid. I'm a comedian. Mm-hmm. I'm not that guy, but I have to like let go of that self-consciousness and do it. But the appreciation that I had was the realization that I do get it now when you hear about actors snapping on set a little bit, which I think, and I don't know that we've ever even talked about this, Rochelle's dad was there on set a lot and was the sweetest guy in the world. But I remember having my coverage of that big moment and having him just unaware, just walking straight into my eye line with his cell phone camera, and
professional sets, everyone.
And I opened my mouth to be like, "You can't fucking do that!" And then I stopped myself, but I was like, "Oh, you know what? I finally get it now." Like the first time that I was in LA, I had a friend bring me onto the set of ER. And I remember walking in, it was some of the Broken Lizard guys, and we were like, oh man, this is cool, we're on the set of ER. And at some point we'd been there for a couple minutes, and then we were sent away, like a PA came over and was like, and we were told that we were in Rebecca De Mornay's eye line. And I remember for years being like, holding it against Rebecca De Mornay, being like, can you believe this fucking diva? Oh, these guys, we were in her eye line, da da da. But it's fucking hard. It's like you're remembering your lines. You're really trying to like do something just right and do something intense and having that emotion. And it can be something as simple as just somebody unaware walking right out in front of you.
That is a difference, because I feel like comedy, it kind of helps every once in a while to have like that live audience feel where you're like, oh yeah, they're like, I see out of the corner of your eye Andy going, I'm like, yes, you're doing right. But when it's drama, the few times I've done drama, I felt the same way, where like you have to hold that impulse, and then you just kind of, I don't know what you did, but I would bring over like an AD or something and be like, hey, I'm not trying to be a dick, but can you just make them move? I don't, it's not a big thing, but just make it, like, try to do it in the nicest way without sounding like Rebecca De Mornay.
But it's hard because, I mean, yes, you're so, it's just like you have this emotional thing, and yet you're responsible for for all this different stuff. And if you're ever on a film set, they're pretty chaotic. You have crew and lights, and you have all this stuff around, and then we rely on these people to especially in a low budget film where I'm like, again, we got like four takes, and then we got to move on and stuff like that. So we're like really expecting them to nail this right off the bat in 1 or 2 takes, and then we just move on and stuff like that. And so it can get a little tense, and it's so uncomfortable for me because I am the least, like, I just do not like conflict at all.
Nope.
Yeah, it is just like the worst. The worst thing ever.
I remember on Funhouse when I have like one really emotional moment. It's just I yell the word fuck, but the scene in that is very emotional, and it's a very quick scene. And that was the only scene I had to shoot that day. And I got called, and then rain delays happened, a stunt woman quit, all this shit went wrong. And I remember I felt like Dirk Diggler from Boogie Nights, where I just keep coming to set and be like, I'm ready now. I'm fucking ready now. And then it's like a few more minutes or a couple more hours. And I'm like, go back to the trailer, get like, all right, I'm ready. I'm fucking ready now. Just like, no. But it is. I think also for comedians, myself included, and comedic actors that I'm friends with that I talk to, and to what you were saying, why comedians are good at drama is because I think that comedy comes from pain.
Yeah.
All good comedy, at least in my experience, the reason I became a comedian in any way was because that's the only way women talk to me and the only way jocks didn't beat me up. And so it comes from an insecurity and a pain. But then the flip side of that is you spend all these years building a wall up to not feel that. So I think that what you were saying about these dramatic scenes, and anytime I've had to do drama, is I feel like I have to really break down that wall even harder. But I think that comedians, once they do break down that wall, it's like because
you see how genuine it is.
Yeah.
You
can see it's real. It's real.
Yeah.
I think that there's, what we're saying is that's why I had to stop doing stand-up. Everybody was just depressed and drinking all the time, and I was like,
oh
God, guys.
We're like Broken Lizard hasn't sort of interacted a ton with the sort of comedy world, but it is really consistent that when we do, we're always like, wow, it turns out that guy is like a really dark person. Oh, wow, it turns out that's a really unhappy person. And I think it's that combination of that, how that all begins, and then I think it's also a really lonely life, and it's a really tough, you get beat up so much over years and years, and you see what that does to people. So I think comedians, if you want to get dark shit, go hang out with comedians.
At the Laugh Factory, they actually have, I don't know if they still do, but back when I was doing that scene, they had a therapist that you could talk to afterwards upstairs, which is a really cool thing that they did because it was around the time when, sadly, a few comedians had either OD'd or committed suicide, and they felt Jamie Masada is really a front runner in comedian support, and he had a therapist there every night. So if people had a great show or had a terrible show, they could go up and talk out their demons to kind of. We've seen it time and time again where comedians have these inner demons. I don't want to get this show super depressing, but as I just derail us into depressing, I start crying into the microphone. Yes, I just want to talk about my demons.
Talk about Richard Pryor.
Badlands of Cain just opened up a whole slew of wounds, and the fact that shenanigans isn't real. So we've talked about the fruition of Badlands of Cain and the filmmaking process of it. And what about like the other cast and crew? How did that come about?
It's kind of our, we try to work with the same people, over and over again. Oh my God, I have 3 minutes.
Oh God, I forgot.
See if you can tell the whole plot.
3 minutes. Here we go. Get the clock going here. But no, we try to work with the same people all the time because you create that consistency, that shorthand and stuff like that. So I've had the same mixer, I've had the same first AD, and everything like that, and then everything flows as smoothly as can on an independent film.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That was a very succinct answer.
Thank you.
Since we only have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I'd like to know what future projects you guys are working on or where people can follow you and look for things, anything you're excited about that you have coming up. So I want you to get whatever you want to pimp out. I want to make sure it gets pimped.
Pimp a dude. Well, I'm at Petrie Andy, and June 7th is the DVD and VOD debut of the Funhouse Massacre. Walmart, Best Buy, Amazon, and all the VOD outlets. Badlands of Cain is out right now on all the VOD outlets, Amazon, Google Play, ATTUverse, iTunes, everything like that. Please, if you watch it, give it a review because it so helps us in the placement department. And then other than that, I got some creepy, scary stuff coming up, but nothing concrete yet.
Scary stuff. Paul, what about you?
Yeah, headed out back east this summer to finish up Super Troopers 2. So that's the big
geeking
thing.
out about that.
Yeah. Which nobody could be more excited than the five of us because we've been trying to get this going forever. And in the meanwhile, always trying to get stuff off the ground, trying to do more horror stuff because I love it. So you can go find me at Paul Soder, which. I have a really cool flame war going on with United Airlines on my Twitter page.
I saw that.
That's about as interesting as that gets.
I want to hear more about that after the show. And where can they find Badlands of Kane? Did we say that, the Twitter handle for that?
Yeah, there's no Twitter handle for Badlands of Kane, but you can go to Facebook, Badlands of Kane, and you can go to our website, PeachtreeEntertainment.com.
Great, awesome. Well, this has been I Talk Movies with Andy Palmer and Paul Soder here, talking Badlands of Kane. I'm your host, Ben Begley, and make sure, like I said, if you didn't watch it already, we have an episode of Guilty Movie Pleasures where we get deep with Super Troopers, and we find out a lot of stuff. It's very fun. We get to peel back the layers of Super Troopers and my knowledge of restaurant chains,
the real world,
and the real world. It all makes sense when you watch it. But thanks for tuning in, and make sure you comment below and follow these guys and do all that other good social media behavior. And until next time, keep watching movies.
Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.